Tonight we begin in Minneapolis, U.S., where a deadly incident involving U.S. immigration agents has sparked outrage nationwide. The big question, was this a case of self-defense or was it an outrageous abuse of power? On January 24th this year, 37-year-old Alex Pretty, an ICU nurse, was killed during a federal immigration raid in Minneapolis. Official reports claim Pretty resisted arrest and threatened agents with a handgun, forcing them to open fire, but eyewitnesses' videos reveal an entirely different story. Pretty was seen filming the raid with nothing but a phone in hand, and he steps in to protect women from pepper spray, then is tackled and pinned by multiple agents. Even after his gun is taken away, Pretty is shot up to 10 times in the back while handcuffed and restrained. The images have sparked outrage, with many calling it execution-style killing. The Department of Homeland Security claims Pretty violently resisted and posed a threat. However, local witnesses and officials are pushing back, calling these claims flat-out lies. Governor Tim Walz has labeled the federal account as nonsense, while Police Chief Brian O'Hara has confirmed Pretty was a legal gun owner with a clean criminal record. Let's listen in.
Well, as I said last week, this federal occupation of Minnesota long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state. And today that campaign claimed another life. I've seen the videos from several angles, and it's sick. Well, as I said last week, this federal occupation of Minnesota long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state. And today that campaign claimed another life. I've seen the videos from several angles, and it's sickening.
Pretty, a dedicated ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital, was remembered by his family as a kind-hearted soul. They have denounced the federal narrative, demanding justice and the truth about their loved one. Pretty's death marks the second fatal shooting of a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis this month. Renee Good was killed on January 7th, and which has sparked nationwide protests against the government's aggressive immigration crackdown under President Donald Trump. One of the most heartbreaking impacts has been on children. 5-year-old Liam Ramos was detained with his father after being used as bait by agents. Minneapolis schools report rising panic attacks, code yellow lockdowns, and students hiding in fear, these kids having their innocence shattered by government raids. International human rights groups, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have condemned the incident, warning that the U.S. is sliding back towards authoritarianism with policies that violate basic human rights. President Donald Trump, who continues to defend his agents' actions, further fueled controversy by accusing Minnesota's leaders of inciting insurrection. His words have only deepened divisions, fueling a growing rift over his enforcement policies. Vice President J.D. Vance has called for greater cooperation between local authorities and federal immigration enforcement, emphasizing the need to reduce tensions and ensure that operations proceed smoothly while prioritizing public safety. Meanwhile, protests are growing nationwide, with demonstrators calling for the immediate withdrawal of federal agents and answers about the shootings. As the protests turn into clashes with law enforcement, the federal investigation into Pretty's death is still in its infancy. The big question still lingers: is this aggressive enforcement about securing the nation, or is it a case of tyranny and abuse of power? Now, for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Andrew Latham. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Mr. Latham, for joining us. Welcome to News 6 World. Now, looking at this is the second fatal shooting of a U.S. citizen by federal immigration agent in Minneapolis within weeks. Now, in your view, what does this pattern suggest about the use of force policies in the current immigration enforcement?
Well, what it suggests to me is this is not outright execution or tyranny or occupation or anything like that. That's hyperbole and not terribly helpful hyperbole. Nor were these two acts legitimate acts of self-defense on the part of ICE agents. It's something in between. It's a consequence of high-risk policing. When you have a surge of 3,000 ICE agents in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities in Minnesota, at a time of a charged media environment, mass protests, a non-cooperative state government and local governments, you put all of that together and you're really asking for trouble. The adrenaline is flowing. People are making split-second decisions, wrong decisions in my judgment, but somewhat understandable. When you create these situations and you put real live human beings in the mix, bad things inevitably will happen. This is not a police state, nor are these agents completely innocent. This is a function, an artifact of a really bad policy conducted in a really charged environment.
Thank you for sharing that. And given the growing community unrest and protests triggered by these shootings, what role should local and state officials play in shaping federal immigration enforcement practices to protect the civil rights while maintaining public safety?
Under the American federal system, state and local officials cannot be compelled to enforce federal law, nor can they impede federal agents trying to enforce federal law. So we're in a kind of a gray zone here where the local authorities don't need to cooperate, are required to cooperate, can't be compelled to cooperate. But by and large in Minnesota, they have, in terms of providing crowd control and things like that. But now we're here getting signals from local law enforcement, whether it's Department of Corrections or local sheriff's offices or police forces in Minnesota cities, that they're not going to be cooperating they're not going to be, for example, Department of Corrections is not going to house undocumented migrants that have been scooped up by ICE. So we're seeing now a dialing back of what was some limited cooperation, and that's going to make the situation even more volatile, more potentially, well, certainly more chaotic, more potentially disastrous, because ICE is depending on local law enforcement to provide the stable conditions on the ground within which they can operate. So I fear things are going to get worse unless the federal government, the Trump administration, decides that it's going to dial back this enforcement. But that's not what's happening. Now there's a parallel surge taking place in Maine. Here it's called, the ICE operation is called Metro Surge. In Maine it's called Catch of the Day. And I expect that there will be similar unfortunate developments there as well. This is not a popular policy in this country. Controlling the border is. The operational mode of ICE and the Customs and Border Patrol is really unpopular, even amongst many people who are otherwise favorably disposed towards the Trump administration.
Thank you for highlighting that and sharing that insight with us. Now, international human rights organizations have raised alarms and national debate is intensifying. So could incidents like this have long-term effects on the US's global reputation?
Yes, I think in terms of soft power, here's the difference. When one person is killed like this, or two people are killed in these circumstances, there is an uproar in the United States. Different levels of government conduct investigations into this. This is not swept under the carpet. This is not the way business is conducted on a daily basis. This is not a police state in that sense. There haven't been 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 protesters killed in American streets, for example. I'll leave it to your viewers to draw the analogy to another country somewhere else on the globe. These are, in the American instance, treated as potential crimes, and they are investigated as such within ICE, beyond ICE at the federal level, and also at the local level as well. That should reassure people that this is not business as usual. These are aberrations, and there's a system of checks and balances that's kicking in, including protests in the street, that you wouldn't find in a police state. Yes, it has the potential. Those who are inclined to look unfavorably at the United States and see a police state will see proof of that. Those who are taking a more sober look at this will say, yes, bad things are happening as a result of policy. Checks and balances will kick in. Eventually, this will be resolved.
And now, with rising concerns over demilitarization of federal agencies during immigration enforcement, do you believe the U.S. should reconsider the role of armed agents in non-violent enforcement situation, and what alternative approaches could be considered?
Well, it's a good question. Obviously, it depends partly on the level of training and expertise of these agents who are on the front line. And on that, I can't comment. But if it's at the low level, if they're not terribly well trained or experienced, then of course bad things can happen. Remember, these are decisions often that take place in a split second when an agent might feel his or her life is in danger. Whether that's true or not, that's not the point. They might feel that it is and then react accordingly. So that's better training and more experience, but also different tactics. Perhaps less lethal, arming them with less lethal weapons. In this case, pepper spray was used and flashbangs were used. But nobody's going to, well, not many people will die from that as opposed to the use of firearms. And perhaps having armed agents in an overwatch situation, just in case things go really bad and somebody does pull a weapon. But the frontline enforcement probably shouldn't involve agents armed with firearms, although firearms should probably be in the background. This is America after all, and that's the way law enforcement works. Clearly the tactics that are being employed now are not working. They are having these horrible consequences, and something needs to be changed. And I think that's the first and most obvious change that could be made. Fewer firearms in the hands of ICE agents, not totally disarmed.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Andrew Latham for joining us today and sharing that insight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, this is all we have for today's episode of Deep Dive. Stay tuned to NewsX World.